Forgive me, I have notes, because if I don't have notes, we're going long, and we've all got homes to go to. My name's Martin. I'm the Digital Director at Katapult, HubSpot Gold Partner since 2013. If you want to speak to us, we'll be in the back. So, an introduction to inbound sales. If you've been paying attention to the HubSpot platform over the past few years with the rollout of CRM, you'll have no doubt heard about inbound sales. But what is it? To understand inbound sales, we need to start with the buyers and how the buying behaviour has changed over recent years. Fundamentally, the power in the buyer and seller relationship has shifted. This is in no small part due to the internet and Google and smartphones being in our pocket. The information needed to make a purchase is just a click away. So buyers have all the information that they need in order to be able to make a purchase without ever really needing to speak to the seller. The buying process has changed. Therefore, the sales process must change with it. And inbound sales transforms that sales process to match the way that people buy today. It's really important that we understand as we shift to inbound sales away from legacy sales that there are two important inbound selling philosophies underpinning the inbound sales approach. The first one is that inbound sales teams base their entire sales strategy on the buyer rather than the seller. That sounds really basic, but it's so interesting to see how few sales teams actually operate in this way. The second is that inbound salespeople personalize the entire sales experience to the buyer's context rather than their own. That's all well and good. But how do we actually start doing inbound sales within our teams? So the first thing we need to do is to define the buyer journey. The first step in transforming the inbound sales model starts here, and you'll have heard a lot about the buying journey throughout the day. Awareness, consideration, decision. I think you've seen about 4 slides with this process on it. So if you can identify the buying journey and the pain points that people are experiencing or the information that they need as they go through the awareness, consideration, and decision stage, you'll be in a good starting point for building out your process. In order to do this, conduct interviews with your customers, with your salespeople, the people that are communicating with your prospects on a daily basis, and try and get a sense for what they're looking for at each stage in the buying journey. Because remember, if the salesperson cannot add value beyond the information the buyer can find on their own, the buyer has no reason to engage with a salesperson. This is where legacy sales teams struggle. Instead, legacy sales teams, they define their sales process. They don't start with a buying journey, they start with the sales process that they've defined. They execute a self-serving sales process and focus more on ticking boxes that their sales manager has given them, rather than focusing on understanding the needs of the buyers. Buyers, we as people, we don't want to be prospected to. We don't want to be demoed to. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, today, I'm going to be closed. That's not the world that we operate in anymore. People don't need to feel like they're going to be closed. If the salesperson cannot add value beyond what a buyer can find on their own, then there's no reason to engage with them. In the 2016, so this was released a couple of weeks ago, the State of Inbound report, it was revealed that the beginning of the sales process is the thorniest. Sales reps identified prospecting is their biggest challenge. Prospecting is difficult when? This is made even more difficult when the lead they're trying to engage with has very little knowledge about the company's products or services. So how do we align a sales activity in such a way that enables more fruitful and productive prospecting and connect calls? Well, that requires us to build a sales process that actually supports that buyer journey, So awareness, consideration, decision. Meet the buyer where they are and add value to them at that stage. Having understood the buyer journey, we must then define the sales process, and unlike legacy sales teams who build the sales process first, inbound sales teams build the sales process once the buyer journey has been defined. Inbound sales teams build the sales process that supports the buyer through that journey. In order to build the sales process, ask yourself what the salesperson can be doing to add value at the awareness, consideration, and decision stage. The inbound sales methodology and HubSpot recommend the Identify, Connect, Explore, and Advise framework. Inbound salespeople identify strangers who may have goals or challenges they can help with. These strangers become leads. Inbound sales, they connect with these leads to help them decide whether they should prioritize the goal or challenge. And if the buyer decides to prioritize the goal, these leads become qualified leads. All the while, it's aligned to awareness, consideration, and decision. So it's worth just going back to this and reiterating the underlying philosophies. One, inbound sales teams base their entire sales strategy around the buyer rather than the seller. And inbound salespeople personalize the entire sales experience to the buyer's context. If you have that at the heart of your inbound sales methodology, you will succeed. So legacy sales teams focus more on getting the message across to the buyer rather than tailoring their message in such a way that they consult with the prospect, uncovering goals and challenges while seeking to identify the right solution. That is the way of the inbound salesperson. Inbound salespeople use all the clues available to them to determine what or who might need their service. Not only do these activities help inbound salespeople identify active buyers, these actions also position inbound salespeople as thought leaders with their buyers. And as inbound salespeople engage with buyers, they have more authority, credibility, and trust. So rather than just picking a target market and calling them randomly, we use the clues to identify active buyers. And this is in the identify stage. During the identify stage, salespeople, they're unaware of which buyers are active in that buying journey. Legacy salespeople identify who they believe would be a good fit for their product or service, build out that list, and start calling people randomly. However, many buyers, they're already at the awareness stage of the buying journey before they engage with a salesperson. And these active buyers, they're the best buyers to target first. But legacy salespeople fail to prioritize these leads. They fail to prioritize the active buyers over the passive buyers. Whereas inbound salespeople always prioritize the active buyers. Inbound salespeople, they start with the buyers that are already in the awareness stage of the journey. Now that could be someone that's been on your website, that's filled out a form, that's commented on a social media post. It's just someone that's giving some clues to suggest that they are in the market. So in order to define those active buyers and really understand what that looks like versus a passive buyer, we need to first of all define the ideal buyer profile. Typically, this is your buyer persona. That's a good place to start. And then identify which leads you have match the ideal buyer persona. And then you want to enrich that lead using any buyer context you can. This is website visits, social media updates, company news, anything you can do that suggests that these people might be in your market. Once you've identified them, you then need to connect with them. So during the connect stage, legacy salespeople focus their prospecting efforts on cold emails and cold voicemails. And these cold outreaches highlight the same generic elevator pitch and entice buyers with the offer to see a presentation. I get them in my inbox day after day. How often do I respond? Never. When legacy salespeople actually get buyers on the phone, most of the effort is spent qualifying them on the size of their budget and their authority to spend, rather than focusing on what I, as a buyer, might be interested in, i.e. achieving my goals or overcoming my challenges. So when inbound salespeople, they reach out to buyers, inbound salespeople reach out to them with a message that's personalized to that buyer's context. This context could be the buyer's industry, it could be something on the company news, some updates along those lines, common interests, common connections, anything along those lines. When inbound salespeople get the buyer on the phone, they identify the buyer's goals and challenges, their interests and their priorities, in order to offer helpful advice. They ask buyers about specific goals, and they show a genuine interest in trying to help them. Mention an article that you read on the company's blog, or share a useful piece of content that's going to help them overcome a particular challenge. Position yourself as a thought leader. Once you've got their attention, you've connected with them, and then you need to move on to the exploratory phase. During the exploratory phase, legacy salespeople transition into presentation mode, the moment that they see the buyer expressing an interest. How about I fix up a WebEx? If you've ever been on the phone to a salesperson, you know that they're trying to get you onto that WebEx as quick as possible. But at this stage, legacy salespeople, they do not understand enough of our context to add a value-adding or to present a value-adding presentation, because the buyer context is underdeveloped. Legacy salespeople revert to a generic presentation, repeating the same information they repeated to the last person that they convinced to join a WebEx. Inbound salespeople, on the other hand, they leverage the buyer interest in order to develop additional trust and uncover deep buyer goals. They position themselves with thought leadership pieces and make themselves appear credible by being genuinely interested in helping the prospect achieve a goal or overcome a challenge. Now, that sounds all well and good, but how do you actually go about hosting an exploratory call? Well, this is the HubSpot framework for that. One, you want to learn the prospect's challenges, understand what's preventing them from achieving their goals, and then connect the challenges to the goals. Understand the prospect's timeline and urgency. This is really, really important. If they've got no urgency, they've got no timeline, you're probably going to spend a lot of time trying to sell to someone who just isn't in the market at this moment. 4, you want to discuss the positive and negative implications of success. So what happens if you achieve your goals? What happens if you do not overcome your goals? Does the business have to make cuts? Does the business achieve great industry recognition? Do you crush your competitors? And then 5, discuss authority, buy-in, and budget. You want to do this at the explore stage. If you can do the budget, authority, need, and timing earlier, then great, but certainly it has to have been done at this stage. If you haven't got BANT qualification at this stage, you really need to refine your exploratory call process. And then finally, once you've been through the exploratory phase with them, you need to start advising. During the advise stage, legacy salespeople deliver the same presentation and the same case studies to all buyers. Legacy salespeople might do some light discovery around buyer needs, just enough to kind of know that there's some interest. And then they revert to the autopilot and deliver the same standard presentation with no customization. It's just the same spiel they've reeled off 1,000 times. According to HubSpot's, again, 2016 State of Inbound report, the average lead to customer conversion rate, so we talked about this earlier, how you'll often hear salespeople say, oh, I close at 100%, or 90, 80, really high conversion rates. The average lead to customer conversion rate is below 20% for almost half of respondents. So we really do need to address the way that we approach our leads. And we need to host better advisory calls in order to close more deals. How do you do that? Again, this framework. Number 1, recap the exploratory call. You want to make sure that the advice you're giving them, or the advice that you're about to start presenting to them, is based on correct and sound understanding of where they are. What are their goals? What are their challenges? Make sure you've been over that ground and confirmed what you understand to be true is true. 2, you want to suggest ways the prospect can achieve their goals or overcome their challenges. Hints, tips, and a timeline. Something that says, if we start doing this here, by this stage, we will have succeeded. If you've ever been sold to by a HubSpot agency partner or HubSpot themselves, you will recognize this conversation very much so. Number 3, you want to confirm decision-making processes budget and timeline. You want to make sure you've got the right people in the room and the budget and the timeline are accurate. So there's no surprises. People aren't going to, just before you present the contract, they go, this isn't what I expected. And then 4, you want to get by commitment so you can move on to the next stage and complete the deal and keep them on track for hitting their goals and challenges. So just to recap, legacy versus inbound. In the legacy sales, unaware of the buyer journey, what they do is they call randomly a list of people that they think are a good fit for their product or service, rather than prioritizing the active buyers. Then they connect using cold emails and voicemails, and they try to book that generic presentation. They give a generic elevator pitch. They don't really go deep into understanding the pain points and the challenges. And they give information that the buyer could already get through a Google search or a user review online. And then finally, in the advice stage, they're just reverting to autopilot, delivering the same tired presentation time and time again. On the flip side, inbound sales, it prioritizes active buyers. We use all of the information available to us to prioritize our sales efforts on those people that are more likely to be in the marketplace. The message is personalized, and we're seeking to help. In that connect stage, it's about saying, look, we can help you guys. We have an offer that we have a service provision that can help you achieve your goals, overcome those challenges, and we want to throw in some tips, build authority, trust, and credibility with the prospect. And in the exploratory stage, we're seeking to explore their challenges and goals further, and we're trying to gauge buyer interest and need. That's really important. How acute is the pain? How acute is the pain, or how high is the urgency to get things moving? And then finally, in the presentation stage, let's say you're a software company and you're doing a demonstration. The demonstration of that product is personalized to their particular pain points. You don't want to show someone a generic presentation on an accounting piece of software when actually your prospect is really interested in the payroll section. You want to focus in on the thing that's relevant to them and make sure that the solution and the advice that you're giving them is relevant to their pain points. So inbound sales transforms sales to match the way that people now buy. If you would like to know more, visit the HubSpot Academy and take the inbound sales certification. That's available to everybody, whether you are a HubSpot customer or not, and it's completely free of charge. Thank you very much.